I was looking at the stack of research you sent over last night, the PDFs and the highlighted pages and the diagrams, and I actually had to physically put it down and just walk away for a second. I had to go make a coffee and literally just stare out the window.
Too dense. Did I overload the server with all that?
No, it wasn't dense in a bad way. It was just heavy. It felt really heavy. Because usually on the transformation roadmap, we are exploring ideas, right? We are looking at maps of the territory. But today feels entirely different.
Yeah, it really is.
Today it feels like we aren't just looking at the map. We are talking about tearing down the house and rebuilding the foundation while we are still living inside the house.
That is a terrifyingly accurate description.
Yeah.
And I think that heaviness you felt, that is the recognition of responsibility. Because the text we are covering for today's deep dive is Kanav Sakhdev's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And it is not a collection of nice aphorisms.
No, definitely not.
It isn't chicken soup for the soul. It isn't something you read to feel fuzzy inside.
Right. And we need to be crystal clear about that up front for everyone listening. Welcome to the Transformation Roadmap. I am your host, and today we are putting on hard hats. We are essentially becoming behavioral architects.
And cognitive engineers. Because Sakhdev frames this text as a literal field manual, a technical blueprint for the human operating system. And the core argument is actually quite unsettling. He argues that 90% of your life, your health, your bank account, your relationships, your stress levels, is being run by a system you aren't even looking at.
That is the exact part that got me. We like to think we're in control. I woke up, I chose my coffee, I drove here, I decided to wear this specific shirt. But Sakhdev says no. You didn't choose any of that. Your autopilot did.
Precisely. And if your autopilot is programmed with a virus, you are going to crash.
Yeah.
It does not matter how hard you grip the steering wheel. So the mission for this deep dive is simple, but very difficult. We are going to strip away the mysticism. We are going to completely ignore any woo-woo stuff.
Right, we are keeping this clinical.
Exactly. We are going to look at the precise psychological engineering required to reprogram the mind.
And just a quick heads up for you listening right now, this is a dense, highly structured system. We are going to spend the next hour or so unpacking the mechanics, but Sakhdev's book is absolutely packed with very specific daily rituals that we just cannot cover in full detail here.
We'd be here for days.
Literally days. So think of us as your orientation guides today. We are going to give you actionable protocols to rewire your neural pathways for success and health. But if you want the full certification in neural architecture, you are eventually going to need the manual itself.
Consider this the demolition phase. We need to see what is underneath the drywall before we can start hanging new pictures.
Let us start with the hardware then, because I think people use the word subconscious all the time. Oh, I subconsciously drove home, or I subconsciously dislike that guy. But we don't actually know what it is mechanically. Sakhdev uses a metaphor that I think is essential to visualize this, the iceberg.
The iceberg is the classic model, but I want to add some texture to it because I think people get it wrong. They think the subconscious is just a storage unit for stuff I forgot. It's not. Imagine you are the captain of a massive ship. You are standing up there on the bridge. You have the binoculars, the nice hat, the star charts. That is your conscious mind.
Okay, so I am the captain. I am rational. I am analyzing data. I am deciding to turn left or right. I feel very important.
You think you are deciding. You look at the horizon and shout full steam ahead. You feel very powerful. But here's the reality. The captain doesn't actually shovel the coal. The captain doesn't turn the massive rudder. The captain doesn't manage the pistons. Who does that?
The crew. The guys down in the dark.
The engine room. That is the subconscious. It is the massive submerged bulk of the iceberg. It is dark down there, it is hot, and it is tirelessly working 24/7. Keeps the ship moving. And here is the single most important design feature of the human mind. The thing that Sakhdev just hammers home page after page. The engine room crew never argues with the captain.
Wait, they don't have veto power. They can't look up and say, hey, Captain, there's a massive rock right there.
Zero veto power. They are non-judgmental executioners. If the captain shouts, we are going to hit that iceberg, the crew doesn't say, sir, that seems like a bad idea. The crew says, aye, aye, sir. Bracing for impact, steering into the ice. They will literally drive the ship into the rocks if that is the order given.
That is actually horrifying because I am realizing how often my internal captain screams out totally incompetent orders. How often do I walk into a room and think I'm going to embarrass myself or I'm going to blow this presentation?
Constantly. We all do it.
Yeah.
And the engine room hears that order, I am going to embarrass myself, and it immediately initiates the biological protocol. It floods your system with cortisol, it tightens your vocal cords so your voice cracks, it makes your hands sweat, it actively deletes the memory of your preparation.
So it's not failing, it's executing my command perfectly.
It is flawless execution. It ensured you embarrassed yourself because you explicitly told it to.
So the subconscious is this blind giant. It has immense power. It regulates my heartbeat and my digestion and my habits and my emotional state. But it has absolutely no ability to discern good from bad. It only knows instruction received.
Exactly. It operates on pure deductive logic. If the premise is true, the captain said, "I am a failure," then the conclusion must be true. I must act like a failure. It does not care if the premise destroys you. It only cares about internal consistency.
This leads us right into the filter mechanism. This was the part of the manual where I really started to understand why I see the world the way I do, because I always assumed my eyes were like cameras, right? Just objectively recording reality.
That is the biggest lie we tell ourselves. Your eyes are not cameras, they are editors.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the reticular activating system, or the RAS. Sakdev alludes to this biological filter constantly. Think of it as the bouncer at the club of your mind.
The bouncer. I like that analogy.
Your brain is bombarded with millions of bits of data every single second. The temperature of the air, the hum of the fridge, the feeling of your shirt resting on your back, the exact shade of the wall, the faint smell of coffee. If your conscious mind, the captain, had to process all of that, you would go insane instantly.
Cognitive overload, a complete system crash.
Total failure. So the subconscious acts as a filter. It deletes 99% of the sensory data before it ever reaches your conscious awareness.
Yeah.
But, and here's the million-dollar question for you as the architect, how does the bouncer decide who gets into the club? How does it decide what to keep and what to delete?
It keeps whatever matches the captain's standing orders.
Bingo. It looks for confirmation. If your core belief, your standing order, is people are generally mean, your subconscious is scanning the room like a radar system. It will spot a frown all the way across a crowded room. It will amplify a slightly sarcastic tone in a colleague's voice. It will highlight the guy who cut you off in traffic.
And what does it do with the person holding the door open for me? Or the person smiling?
It literally deletes it. You will not even register it happened. It is like it did not exist in your physical reality. Sakdev explains that we are walking around in a reality that is actively being curated to prove us right. If you think you're a victim, your subconscious will edit the movie of your life in real time to ensure you are the star of a tragedy.
This perfectly explains why you can't just tell someone to cheer up. You are fighting your own operating system. You're fighting a bouncer who has been strictly ordered to only let the bad guys in. But where does that original code come from? I didn't wake up one day and consciously decide to program my brain for anxiety. I didn't ask the developer for this software.
No, you didn't. And this is the tragedy of the blueprint. Sakdev argues that the foundational code was written when you were in a hypnotic state.
Hypnotic state? You mean when we were kids?
Exactly. From birth to about age 7, children are primarily in a theta brainwave state. That is literally the state of hypnosis. It is a pure download mode. Children do not have a critical filter yet. They do not have a captain on the bridge yet. The engine room is just completely unshielded.
So the doors are just wide open to any data.
Wide open. So if a teacher tells you that you are bad at math, or a parent says money is hard to get, or you see your parents fighting, you implicitly learn that love is dangerous. That data doesn't just go into your memory banks. It goes into the source code. It becomes the foundational operating system.
It becomes a hard-coded rule. If math, then panic. Or if intimacy, then run.
Exactly right. And Sakdev brings up the concept of the shadow self and the inner child here. Now, usually when people hear inner child, they roll their eyes. They think it's soft therapy speak. But in the context of this manual, think of them as literal database sectors.
Okay, let's break that down. Database sectors.
The inner child is the database sector holding your primary emotional needs and your earliest programming. The shadow self is the sector where you store the parts of yourself that you are actively taught to reject. If you were shamed for being loud as a kid, your shadow holds your voice. You locked it away in the basement of the engine room.
And now, 30 years later, you are a professional in a board meeting. You have a great idea, but you physically cannot speak up. Your throat closes.
Because the engine room is referencing a rule from 1995 that says, speaking up equals rejection. Rejection equals death. Initiate shutdown protocol. And you sit there silent and frustrated, wondering why you lack willpower. It is not a lack of willpower. It is perfect execution of outdated programming.
The book actually illustrates this beautifully with a clinical case study that I found really relatable, the story of Alex.
Oh, Alex. I think everyone listening knows an Alex. Or maybe you are the Alex in your life.
Alex is the guy who looks like he is winning the game. He's a marketing executive, he has the corner office, he drives the nice car. On paper, the captain is standing on the bridge shouting, "We are highly successful."
But the ship is shaking apart at the seams. Alex is suffering from severe chronic anxiety, imposter syndrome, and massive burnout. Why? Because of dissonance. His conscious mind says, I'm a success, but his subconscious blueprint, written maybe by a hypercritical father or a fiercely competitive school environment, says, you are a total fraud. You are not enough. It is all going to be taken away.
And who wins in a physical fight between the captain and the engine room?
The engine room. Every single time. Because the engine room controls the biological energy. Alex is exhausted because he is burning 80% of his daily energy just fighting his own crew. He is trying to willpower his way through a software program that is fundamentally designed to make him fail.
So willpower is a finite resource then?
Willpower is the captain gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turn white. You can do it for an hour, maybe a day if you are tough. But eventually you have to sleep. Eventually you get tired. And the exact moment you let go, the engine room steers the ship directly back to the original coordinates. This is exactly why New Year's resolutions fail by February. You are trying to use conscious willpower to override subconscious programming. It mechanically cannot work long term.
So how do we fix Alex? How do you and I fix ourselves? Socdev pivots here to the mechanism of belief. And he makes a distinction that I think is crucial for the listener to grasp. He says we have to completely redefine what a belief actually is.
Right, because we treat beliefs like they are empirical facts. I am bad at public speaking. We think that is a fact, like gravity exists.
Right.
But Socdev and modern neuroscience heavily backs this up, defines a belief as simply a thought you have thought over and over again until it physically became a neural pathway.
It's a groove in the record.
It is a canyon. The first time you think it, it is a fragile spiderweb. The 1000th time, it is a thick steel cable. Socdev cites Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset here to ground this in behavioral science. The difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset isn't natural ability. It is the software. It is the core belief about whether you are mechanically capable of change.
And this creates what he calls the cycle of belief.
It is a closed loop. Belief drives emotion. Emotion drives action. Action drives reality. Let's look at the Alex case study again. His belief is, I am an imposter.
So the emotion that follows is fear, anxiety, a physical tightness in the chest.
Right, which drives his action. He overprepares, he micromanages his team, he hesitates on big decisions, he constantly asks for permission.
And the reality that creates is he burns out. He makes a mistake because he is exhausted, or he alienates his team because he's micromanaging.
And then what happens at the end of that loop?
The feedback loop closes perfectly. The mistake confirms the original belief. He says, see, I knew I was a fraud.
It is a flawless, self-fulfilling prophecy machine. The machine is not broken. It is working perfectly. It is just programmed to destroy you.
Okay, so as behavioral architects, we have identified the hardware, we see the software, and we understand the virus. The picture is clear, and honestly, it is a little bleak. But this is the transformation roadmap, not the transformation dead end. The critical question for you listening is, how do we actually rewrite code in a system that is fundamentally designed to resist change?
That brings us to the core of Socdev's manual, the protocols. And the first one is about learning the actual programming language. Because as it turns out, the subconscious does not speak English.
It speaks what then?
It speaks vibrational language. Yeah. And this is where we have to talk about affirmations. That way I can see you physically rolling your eyes.
I am a little bit, I won't lie. Because the word affirmations has a terrible reputation. People immediately think of that old Saturday Night Live sketch. Stuart Smalley looking in the mirror saying, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. It feels incredibly cheesy. It feels ineffective. But Socdev frames this completely differently. He frames this strictly as writing code.
You have to move entirely beyond wishful thinking. If you are typing code into a computer system, syntax matters immensely.
Yeah.
If you type the wrong command, the system either crashes or does absolutely nothing. The subconscious is exactly the same. Socdev provides very specific rules for syntax that 90% of people get wrong when they try this.
Okay, lay it on me. What is the very first rule of syntax?
The first rule is present tense only. You cannot say, I will be confident.
Why not? That sounds like a perfectly reasonable goal.
Because the subconscious takes things hyper-literally. If you say, I will be confident, the subconscious says, okay, noted. We will put that on the schedule for later.
Yeah.
It keeps the condition permanently in the future.
That's right.
It is like a carrot dangling on a stick. You never actually reach it. You just chase it forever. The command must be, I am confident.
Even if you don't feel it yet, even if I am literally shaking in my boots before a speech.
Especially if you don't feel it yet. You are overriding the current status.
Yeah.
You're actively telling the operating system, this is the new reality. Adjust the biology to match. The second rule of syntax is it must be positive. You cannot say, I am not anxious.
Because the subconscious doesn't process negative modifiers.
Right. If I say to you right now, do not think of a giant pink elephant, what do you immediately do?
I see a giant pink elephant in my head.
Exactly. So if you feed it the command, I am not anxious, the subconscious just hears the word anxious. It highlights the anxiety. You have to phrase it as the opposite positive state. I am calm. I am grounded.
And the third component of the syntax.
Repetition. This is basic neuroplasticity. You are physically carving a new groove in your brain. A path through a dense jungle does not form by walking down it one single time. You have to walk in 1,000 times to beat down the weeds and make a trail.
But here is where the text gets really interesting, because SocDev says the words themselves are not enough. You can repeat, I am rich 1,000,000 times, but if you feel poor while you are saying it, the code will not compile.
This is the critical component, emotional resonance. SocDev calls it vibrational language. The subconscious is at its core an emotional engine. It doesn't speak English. It speaks feeling. If you say, I am successful, but your body is physically flooded with the chemistry of fear and lack, the subconscious listens to the chemistry, not the words. It says, well, he is saying success, but his body feels fear. I will prioritize the fear data.
The text actually mentions epigenetics here, which I found absolutely fascinating, because this takes it out of abstract psychology and firmly into hard biology.
It is the cutting edge of science right now. We used to think genes were rigid destiny. My dad had a bad temper, so I just have a bad temper. Now we know genes are actually switches. Beliefs and chronic stress levels can literally flip those biological switches on or off. SocDev is suggesting that by changing your emotional resonance, by physically practicing the feeling of gratitude or success before it happens, you might be influencing your actual gene expression. You are signaling the physical body to exist in a completely different chemical state.
So to make the new code stick, we need the specific inputs. Present tense positive syntax plus repetition plus emotional resonance. And then he adds one more massive layer to the protocol: visualization.
The mind movie. This is advanced mental rehearsal. We see this in elite athletics all the time now. The text mentions how Olympic athletes use visualization to trigger muscle memory without moving a single physical muscle. When you vividly visualize running a race perfectly, the exact same neural pathways fire in your brain as if you were actually out on the track running.
So the subconscious literally cannot tell the difference between a vivid mental visualization and actual reality.
Not if the visualization is high fidelity enough. If you can see it, and smell it and feel the texture of it, the engine room accepts it as hard sensory data.
I remember reading about the lemon test in the manual. If you close your eyes right now and vividly imagine biting into a very sour, wet lemon, your mouth will physically start to water.
Exactly. Your conscious mind knows for a fact there is no lemon in the room. But your subconscious says acid detected. Deploy saliva immediately. That is the raw mechanical power of visualization. So Gadev outlines a specific 5-step protocol in the book. Identify the goal, craft the precise affirmation, repeat it, visualize it with high fidelity, and integrate the emotion. It is a daily loop.
It sounds like actual work.
It is work. That is why he calls it a system and not a magic trick. It is strict discipline. And again, the book breaks this down into such granular detail, like exactly how to breathe while you do it, what specific brainwave states or times of day are best. We just can't cover it all on this show. But if you aren't doing the daily reps the way he outlines, you aren't changing the code.
Okay, speaking of things that happen daily, let us transition to the time when we are completely unconscious. Segment 2 of our breakdown covers Protocol 2, nightly data processing, or as normal people call it, dreams.
This is arguably one of the densest and most profound sections of SocDev's manual. He completely reframes what sleep is. It is not just biological rest. It is active system maintenance and massive data consolidation.
I love how he frames dreams as encrypted messages.
They absolutely are. The conscious mind goes offline, the captain goes to sleep in his quarters, and the subconscious immediately starts sorting through the massive file cabinets of data you collected all day. But because the subconscious is highly symbolic, remember, it predates verbal language, the messages come through in encrypted code.
Yeah.
It doesn't send you a neatly typed memo saying you are afraid of your boss. It sends you a vivid dream where you are being chased through the woods by a giant bear wearing a necktie.
Right, a bear and a tie. But how do we actually decrypt this? The text makes a really clear distinction between personal symbolism and universal archetypes.
Correct. An archetype is universal across human consciousness. Like water, usually representing emotion. If the ocean in your dream is turbulent, your internal emotions are turbulent. But personal symbolism is highly unique to your specific database. If you grew up with a lovable pet snake, a snake in your dream might mean comfort or play. If you were viciously bitten by a snake as a kid, it means severe threat. You have to learn to decode your own unique cipher.
Let's talk about the case study of Rachel from the book. This one really stuck with me because it shows exactly how practical dream decoding can be.
Rachel had recurring dreams of her childhood home. She was just walking through the empty rooms over and over again. She felt a deep sense of unease. But nothing terrible was actually happening in the dream. It was just a stuck loop.
And Sokhtev defines recurring dreams as basically system alerts, right?
Exactly. It is an unresolved file. The subconscious is flashing a warning saying, hey, we haven't processed this data yet. I am going to keep forcing you to look at it until you resolve it. Rachel did the decoding work using the specific interpretation protocols in Sokhtev's book. And she realized the physical house represented her deep desire for parental validation that she never received. The unease in the dream was the literal feeling of walking on eggshells around her parents.
So the dream wasn't actually about the physical architecture of the house. It was entirely about the trapped feeling.
It is always about the underlying feeling. Once she consciously decoded that and actively addressed the need for validation in her waking life through boundaries and therapy, the recurring dreams completely stopped.
Right.
The file was processed and closed. The system alert was resolved.
That is incredibly powerful. And then Sokhtev takes it a massive step further into lucid dreaming, which honestly feels like taking the red pill and waking up inside the Matrix.
He calls it taking the reins. Lucid dreaming is the moment you consciously realize you are dreaming while you are still inside the dream. It turns the entire simulation into an interactive sandbox. Sokhtev suggests this isn't just a cool party trick. It is a high-level tool for problem solving. If you can wake up the captain inside the dream state, you can actively confront the monster. You can turn around and ask the bear in the tie, why exactly are you chasing me?
The manual also includes a really specific protocol for reality checking, right? Doing checks during the day to trigger lucidity at night.
Yes, things like looking at your hands or trying to push your finger through your palm while you're awake. If you make it a hard habit during the day, your subconscious will eventually do it during a dream. And when your finger goes to your hand, you realize, oh, I'm dreaming. The system becomes lucid.
The text also touches heavily on the Vedic history of dreams, which adds a really fascinating historical and spiritual layer to all this. It shows this isn't just some modern pop psychology invention.
It certainly does. Sokhtev grounds his modern cognitive engineering in ancient structural wisdom. The Vedic tradition views the dream state, which they call swapna, as a literal bridge to a higher state of consciousness. They talk about redum, which translates to cosmic order or universal truth. The core idea is that in deep sleep, you are temporarily disconnected from your anxious ego and connected to a universal intelligence that is vastly smarter than your waking mind.
And he backs that ancient idea up with very modern examples of scientific innovation. Einstein, Ramanujan, Mendeleev.
The periodic table is the perfect example. Mendeleev literally saw the entire structure of the elements in a dream. His conscious mind had completely hit a wall. He had all the raw data, but the captain couldn't organize it. He went to sleep. The subconscious, which again has massive parallel processing power, crunched the data without the interference of waking stress, and it presented the elegant solution to him as a visual image.
It really makes you wonder how many world-changing ideas we have just slept right through because we didn't have a notepad by the bed.
Or simply because we fundamentally did not respect the process. We treat sleep as an annoying biological necessity rather than a high-powered creative studio. Sokhtev argues we need to actively prime the mind before sleep, give the engine room a very specific problem to solve before you drift off.
That segues perfectly into Protocol 3, the creative engine. Because as you are learning, it is not just about what happens when we are dreaming. It is about how we physically create when we are wide awake. Sokhtev talks about this concept of the harmony of opposites.
This is the creative symbiosis protocol. You have logic, which is the conscious mind, and you have imagination, which is the subconscious. And most people, they're constantly fighting. Logic says that is a stupid idea, it will never work, it is way too expensive. Imagination says, but it's cool and new,
Hmm.
Let's try it.
And usually logic violently kills imagination before it can even stand up on its own 2 feet.
Right, so the protocol is to get them to work in alternating shifts, convergence and divergence.
Expand on that for us. How does that mechanical process work?
You use the subconscious to diverge, to
Ah.
go incredibly wide, generate wild, unconnected ideas, embrace total chaos, make bizarre connections that do not make logical sense. You basically turn off the captain entirely, let the crew run wild in the dark. Then and only after you have generated the raw material, you bring the captain back to the bridge to converge, to edit, to structure, and to execute the final plan. The massive problem is most of us try to edit while we are still brainstorming. That is exactly like slamming on the brakes while you're pressing the accelerator. You just destroy the engine.
And that premature editing is what leads to the inner critic.
The inner critic is just the voice of fear masquerading as practical logic. SOCDEV provides a specific psychological protocol for silencing this voice. It involves recognizing that the critic is not an enemy. It is a primitive, protective mechanism that has gone totally haywire. It thinks it is keeping you safe from social failure, but it is actually keeping you safe from any kind of meaningful success.
I really love the section in the manual on embracing chaos. The text uses Miles Davis and Frida Kahlo as prime examples of this.
Chaos-based creativity. It is about reframing unpredictability as a rich data source rather than a threat. Miles Davis didn't just play the notes written on the page. He played the empty spaces between them. He actively embraced mistakes as exciting new directions. If he hit a technically wrong note, he made it the right note by dictating what he played immediately after it. Frida Kahlo took her horrific physical trauma, extreme bodily chaos and pain, and instead of shutting down, she used it as the raw, unfiltered data for her surrealist art. They did not try to sterilize their subconscious minds. They mined them for gold.
So true creativity isn't about being perfectly organized or having a sterile workspace. It is about being willing to dive headfirst into the messy basement of your own mind.
Exactly right. And then he moves into the concept of the collective subconscious, which is where the system engineering gets a little more connected and expansive.
He calls it the invisible thread of shared intuition.
Right, when you have a corporate team that is really deeply in sync, or a jazz band improvising together, they tap into a shared intuitive network. It is like their individual subconscious minds are temporarily networked together via Wi-Fi. You completely stop consciously thinking about what the other person's going to do next, and you just implicitly know. SOCDEV argues this high-level collaborative creativity is completely accessible if you lower the rigid ego barriers of the conscious mind. It is a shared flow state.
So we have extensively covered the architecture of the mind, the mechanics of dreams, and the creative engine. But you and I still have to live in a physical body, and we have to interact with other human beings. Segment 5 covers system maintenance, health, and relationships.
This is where somatic engineering comes into play. The mind-body connection isn't some poetic metaphor. It is hard biological reality. We have to look closely at the placebo effect here.
People always use the word placebo as a synonym for fake, right? No, it's not real medicine. It is just the placebo effect.
SOCDEV completely flips that narrative. He says the placebo effect is undeniable clinical proof that the human mind can manufacture tangible biological reality. Think about the mechanics of it. You take a literal sugar pill, but your conscious mind believes it is a powerful painkiller. Your brain, the engine room, receives the strict order pain relief incoming. It then physically produces actual endogenous opioids. It opens its own internal pharmacy and alters your blood chemistry.
So the belief literally created the corresponding chemistry.
Yes, the physical body blindly followed the mental blueprint. If your mind can do that with a useless sugar pill, what exactly do you think you are doing with your chronic stress thoughts every single day? You're actively manufacturing physical illness.
And the text directly links this chronic stress to the default mode network, or the DMN, in the brain.
Yes. The DMN is the specific network of brain regions that becomes highly active when you are not engaged in the specific focused task. It is the brain's internal screensaver. And for most modern people, the screensaver is a terrifying loop of worry, deep regret about the past, and severe anxiety about the future.
It is the All About Me channel broadcasting 24/7.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it burns massive amounts of metabolic energy. SOCDEV cites hard neuroscientific evidence that consistent meditation actively reduces activity in the DMN. When the DMN finally goes quiet, your stress hormones physically drop, systemic inflammation lowers, and the body can actually begin to heal itself. You basically stop getting in your own biological way.
The specific section on subconscious eating was a massive wake-up call for me. The concept that we aren't eating because our bodies need fuel, we are eating because of a hidden emotional driver.
It is emotional hunger masquerading as physical hunger. If your early childhood subconscious is programmed to view sugary food as comfort or deep safety, maybe your grandma always gave you cookies when you scraped your knee, then every single time you feel unsafe as an adult, maybe from stress at work or a fight with your partner, the engine room initiates a protocol. It orders a cookie to establish safety.
And absolutely no amount of conscious dietary restriction fixes that root code.
You cannot willpower or diet your way out of a deeply embedded emotional algorithm. You have to mechanically reprogram the safety signal itself. You have to teach the engine room a new rule. We can feel perfectly safe without requiring sugar.
And speaking of feeling safe, let's shift gears and talk about relationships. The text calls this network dynamics.
This brings us straight into attachment styles, which is pure, unfiltered subconscious programming playing out in real time. If your early caregivers were highly inconsistent or emotionally unavailable, you might easily develop an anxious attachment style. You desperately crave closeness, but you are terrified of abandonment. So your subconscious is constantly scanning your partner for microsigns that they're preparing to leave you.
The case study for this in the manual is Sarah.
Right, Sarah. A highly successful woman, very smart, very capable in the boardroom, but in her romantic relationships, a complete wreck, wildly oscillating between desperately clinging to her partners and aggressively pushing them away. She had a massive fear of abandonment script running silently in the background of her operating system.
And she used the exact protocols from the book, the targeted meditation, the affirmations, to rewrite the script to actually permanently change her attachment style.
She did. And this is a crucial takeaway for the listener. You are not permanently stuck with your childhood attachment style. It is written in software. It is not cast in hardware. Sarah used specific somatic engineering to rewrite the code from anxious to secure. She mechanically learned to self-soothe her own nervous system so she was no longer demanding that her partner regulate her internal state for her.
The text mentions the concept of microsignals here too, which is fascinating.
We communicate 90% of our actual data non-verbally. Tone of voice, facial microexpressions, body posture, pupil dilation. Your subconscious is constantly broadcasting your true internal state like a radio tower. If your conscious mind is saying the words "I love you," but your subconscious is screaming "I absolutely do not trust you," the other person's subconscious picks up the scream. It ignores the polite words entirely.
That is exactly why your gut feelings about certain people are almost always right. Your engine room is actively talking to their engine room beneath the surface.
Exactly. Empathy is just a subconscious bridge. And if you want to dramatically improve your relationships, you don't just need to memorize better communication scripts or pickup lines. You need to fundamentally clean up the broadcast signal that is continuously radiating from your subconscious mind.
So what does this all mean for our practical daily lives? You and I can't just sit around cross-legged analyzing our dream symbols all day. We need an actionable routine. Segment 6 is the architect's routine.
This is where the rubber finally meets the road. Habits and strict discipline. SOCDEV breaks down the mechanics of the habit loop.
Creation and transformation.
You cannot just hit delete on a deeply ingrained bad habit. The brain doesn't work that way. You have to actively override it with new code. You need a clear cue, a routine, and a reward. But SOCDEV places massive emphasis on environmental design.
Aligning the physical workspace to seamlessly support the mental software.
Exactly. If you want to reprogram your mind for deep focus, but your physical desk is chaotic and your phone is buzzing with notifications, you are fighting a losing battle. The physical environment acts as a constant sensory signal to the subconscious. A clean, minimalist desk signals clarity and order. A messy, cluttered bedroom signals chaos and stress. You have to meticulously design the physical stage for the specific play you want your mind to act out.
And of course, meditation. It just keeps coming back to this core practice in every chapter.
Because it is the foundational architectural tool of the entire system, he frames it not as some woo-woo spiritual retreat, but as mechanically defragging the hard drive.
Defragging. I really like that technological analogy.
It is precisely what it is. It is actively organizing the scattered files, clearing the temporary cache that is slowing the system down. The hard neuroscience shows that consistent meditation actually changes the gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. That is the captain's deck. It literally makes the captain physically stronger and makes the engine room much calmer. It gives you that crucial split-second pause between a stimulus and your habitual response where you can actually choose your action rather than just blindly react.
And this is a really big, but for everyone listening right now, we have only barely scratched the surface here. We have been talking for nearly an hour diving deep into these concepts, but this is a massive comprehensive system.
We truly have only sketched an outline. We have talked broadly about what you need to do. But the highly specific daily rituals, the exact word-for-word scripts for the affirmations, the step-by-step visualization guides, the precise breathing techniques to enter theta state, that is all contained explicitly within the book.
Right.
Saktev's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind contains the full architectural blueprints. We have essentially just given you a rough sketch on a cocktail napkin today.
If you are genuinely serious about this, if you actually want to mechanically rewire the machine rather than just conceptually understanding how the gears turn, you unequivocally need the full manual. You need to study the diagrams. You need to read the specific clinical case studies that closely mirror your own life.
So let us wrap this massive deep dive up with a final thought for you to chew on. We have journeyed all the way from the iceberg metaphor to the creative engine, to the hard biological reality of the placebo effect.
The ultimate takeaway is this. You are the architect. For most of your adult life, you have been living inside a house that was blindly built by toddlers. Your childhood self, your unexamined traumas, random chance encounters. You did not consciously design the structure, but you are currently living inside it.
And the subconscious is simply the builder. It is standing there right now, hammer in hand, eagerly waiting for new instructions.
Waiting for new explicit instructions. If you do not hand it a new blueprint today, it will just keep tirelessly repairing the old crooked house. It will keep mechanically reinforcing the anxiety, the fear, and the limitations you hate.
That is the mission we set out for you. But as we said earlier, partial information is highly dangerous. You cannot build a stable skyscraper with only half of a blueprint.
No, you cannot. You need the exact specs. You need the granular details.
So here is the hard call to action for you. We do not usually do this so directly on the show, but this cognitive tool is entirely too important to half-ass. If you want to permanently master these protocols and rewire your operating system, you must acquire the full text. The specific book is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Kanav Sakdev.
It is available right now on Amazon and Google Play. Get the ebook, get the physical print version, actually mark it up, highlight the protocols, write your own code in the margins. Treat this book exactly like a technical textbook for the most important engineering class you will ever take in your life.
And for those of you who really want to immerse yourself, who want to actively reprogram the engine room while you commute to work or while you are at the gym, I highly recommend getting the official audiobook version.
Yes, it is available on Spotify and Google Play. Listening to the spoken protocols is actually an incredibly effective way to bypass the conscious captain's filter and deliver the code straight into the subconscious. Let the voice sink directly into the engine room.
The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Kanav Sakdev. Go get it right now. Start the mental renovation today.
The engine room is waiting for your orders.
Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive deep dive on the transformation roadmap. We will see you in the next one.
Keep building.